Let's do this.
Let's rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
Let's talk dirty.
All right, guys. Let's talk. I'm going to have you do some recordings here. All right. So this is what we got coming here, guys. This is Laura Rothschild, right? Is that how I said it?
Oh, yeah.
Laura Rothschild. So you're a licensed professional sex and intimacy coach.
That's correct.
Is what you're saying. Like that's
the kind of thing that makes everybody uncomfortable.
It makes a lot of people uncomfortable, I feel, when it comes to that topic of sex. And
yeah, just saying the word sex, like I ask people, how does that make you feel? Like in this instant,
yeah,
like, what's going on in your body when just saying the word sex?
I get tingles.
Tingles?
Yeah, not like bad tingles, like good tingles.
Where do you get tingles? Do share.
So when I hear,
we're just getting started.
when I hear sex therapist or sexologist, the first thing that came to my mind was like, are you standing in the room and like coaching people how to do it?
Well, no, that's called prostitution and that's illegal.
I mean, it's consensual if they're like letting you be in the...
No, but yeah. Well, okay. So let's, on a more serious clinical note, it really depends on the individual. Yes. Part of what I do is sensation based. So we're somatic, which is in the body.
Okay.
A therapist is primarily geared around talk therapy. Now, that's not to say that, it really does depend on the individual, their training, their specialty. And so myself and a sexologist, being someone who studies the science of sex, as opposed to a sex therapist who is a very distinct practice, is that, part of what I do is helping people get in touch with their bodies and how they respond to sensation, to words, to connecting with all their five senses versus just talking about sex.
Okay.
So, we might go back in time, and talk about trauma or experiences. And trauma, there's a lot of distinctions between trauma. But a lot of it is just looking forward too. How do you want to be sexually? How do you want to get reconnected? So that's a lot of what I do. So when I work with clients in person, often we're just talking face to face, over the phone, on Zoom, or depending upon, it could be couples or individuals, they want to understand where trauma might be in their body or how they can be more responsive to sensations. So I will be in the room and can do various techniques that help them get in touch with their body, but it's not a sexual nature, which I think was what your question was.
Now, when you say techniques, I mean...
techniques. So let's use one exercise. If we want to go right into what are the physical techniques, there is a game we call like the AB game. And the point of it is to get to know what your erotic blueprint or preferences are. So you might be blindfolded and you might be sitting there. This could be done with a partner, and you can actually even do this on yourself, or as a coach, I would work with either couples in the room together or with an individual, and we're fully clothed, or as a couple or yourself, you can be naked, and taking various sensation tools like feathers and sharp objects or floggers or ropes, and seeing which sensation you prefer.
So it's kind of like a trust exercise too then, right? So
it's very much, it is. And that's right there alone is the first exercise.
Okay.
And seeing, and also, everything I do is around consent and boundaries. And so, kind of we jumped ahead in what the actual process, what the physical process looks like, but the first thing right out of the gate with most of my clients is having conversations around empathy and understanding what your definitions of empathy are, what your boundaries are, and full consent, and what that means as an individual or in a relationship. So whether you're out there with multiple partners, have been with the same partner, or not even in a partner, but you're out there dating and exploring, and that's kind of how all this came about, is understanding where you are in your phase of sexuality. Because we talk about, there's not just, there's different stages and phases. There's different blocks to intimacy in sex, and there's different, what we call blueprints.
Okay.
So, these are all the things that I work on with clients, but right out of the gate, it's understanding empathy, because you have to be able to understand, and this is where a lot of couples or partners break down, is that they're different blueprints or have different sexual needs, and they don't understand each other. So I give people a language and I give them tools to communicate with someone else about their sexuality, what their needs are. And a lot of it is just starting with clients, teaching them how to ask for what they want or even know what they want.
Yeah. And when you're doing those things, how often do you see more resistance towards men, or do you see more resistance towards women when you're going through these type of, conversations and tools? I mean, it's got to be a big vulnerability to be able to talk about, what you want or what feels good, or, even in the process. I know a lot of people who essentially when they're having, intimacy with their partners, essentially, or having sex with their partner, usually they...
See how hard it is to say the word sex?
It was a little hard.
I noticed you paused. I often will pause until I know that the person across from me feels comfortable, because I think you and I were in a situation where we initially spoke and we were in a very public place and there was someone in the room, and out of personal respect, I'm very cautious at times when I first start talking about it, because it does make people uncomfortable.
It does. And I think when, like I was saying, when someone has sex with their partner, for that woman or that man to be like, oh yeah, that feels good. Keep doing that. This feels good. Here, let me show you how to do this. I mean, that's like big vulnerability, I feel, for people. And I mean, for men, I feel like sometimes they can take it as a like ego shot, like, ugh, all right, I think I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this for, 34 years, like, but then at the end of the day, it's just like, no, they're just trying to help you, like, guide you in a certain way, I'm sure.
And I loved how you said that, because that is one, I mean, I can't say, your question was, do I see more of a resistance with men or women? I see different things. I will say that I find that women are not as comfortable with articulating what feels good to them.
So and they're a little bit more quiet and reserved, I'm sure.
Well, because they've been shamed.
Yeah.
We're slut shamed. That if you are outgoing and ask for sex or initiate sex, then you must be a slut. And yes, you make a face, and I agree, but you'd be surprised at how growing up, in high school, or women, or, different ages, are classified by their peers as, oh, she's loose, or she's... So, there's just so many mixed messages, and there's so many things to unpack there around what your sex education was, what your first sexual experience was. All of these things, affect and have an influence on your sexual health as an adult. And the other thing is masturbation. Like, for women, masturbation, like, for whatever reason, it's assumed that all men masturbate, but know that women don't. But yet there's a million vibrators and things out there. And like, it's just, women don't talk about it. And what's so fascinating is I recently heard a statistic that there was a large research study done in England in which they took 500 women and showed them a picture of a vagina, of a vulva, because actually the vagina is the birth canal, and the vulva are all the lips and pieces and parts outside. So really, it's truly a vulva. So the words, and asked them to identify the different parts, and like over 60% of them could not. So we aren't taught as women to get comfortable or really understand our genitals or explore. Whereas men, I mean, and also you play with it all the time. Other people play with it all the time for you, and it's just
we're good to go.
And because it's it's more external.
Yeah,
it's just more explored and well known. So I think that the resistance I see more is, I kind of want to touch back on the ego part. because one of the initial resistance I will hear from couples or partners is that, oh my gosh, I'm afraid to talk to my partner about this, or I'm afraid to tell them that, sorry about the noise, that I want to explore better sexuality, because they're afraid that they're going to think that it's not good, and therefore that's why I'm looking to get help or have us, get more tools or techniques. And so because there is an ego thing, and the reality is that when someone's asking you for something, it's really helping your partner understand that this is it's to help them, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to this slut shaming thing. Like, how do you think that came about, I guess? Like, men, we can sleep with like 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 different women, and we would be praised for it. But like for women, they sleep with 10 guys, 15 guys, 20 guys, 100 guys, and it's like not a good thing. Well, I mean, it can come from a few things. I mean, without attacking any one particular institution, is that, I mean, a lot of our Puritan religious values are influence people's views on sex. And also I think that plays a big role into it. And again, it's culturally and historically, women are not allowed to experience pleasure. It's more of the masculine, societal, paternal, his kind of, views that we're trying to break down. Yeah. And, right. I think it goes generations, and there's multiple reasons, that I could go into. What got you into wanting to be a sexologist, or like, what is it that drove you? You were like, you know what? I want to explore my vulva. So
I haven't explored my vulva since I was
in general,
like,
I guess,
3 or probably, I don't know, that's my mom, but it's interesting because it's not that I grew up in a sexually open, or, my parents weren't like, I didn't grow up on a commune where it was like free love, but I was fortunate enough to grow in a very loving home. And I think that sex, although it wasn't like open and people didn't talk about it, because I came from also a very traditional Catholic Italian family, my parents at a very young age sat me down and were like, okay, here's a book, and this is how babies are made, and do you have any questions? Like, I remember being really young. And so I always was comfortable with my sexuality. I also think my parents had gay friends. They had very large social group. They weren't like, I don't remember there being shame around seeing my mom naked in the shower when I was little, like, or walking into the bathroom. And so I think that everything led up to this in my whole life, in the sense that I'm just curious, and I've always been curious. And I started off the early part of my life in education as a pre-med exercise science student, major, and then went on to pre-med and nursing. I was always fascinated with the body and wellness and movement and how the body moves. So I was always very in touch with my body. So I think that definitely laid the foundation, but it truly wasn't until, my divorce. I was married for 17 years, and gosh, we were together 20 years. And so I found myself in my late 40s, all of a sudden out in, the dating single world after being with one person for 20 years. And that just like cracked me open and brought up every bit of shame or curiosity. And I was so inquisitive about, wow, what is this like, and what's going on? And I guess that led me on that path about, 3 years ago, to just dive into understanding my body now at almost 50, and what that meant to be a sexual being out in the single world again. Wow. And I think it was out of just pure fear too. Like, instead of, in curiosity. Yeah.
So now that you went into this pool of sexual world, or of this single life, what did you do? What was the first thing you did? Like, you were out there, you were single, and you were like, I'm sure it hit you like, holy crap, I have to start dating again.
Yeah. It was so funny that it's interesting. My ex-husband was the one who got me into dating.
Really?
Which is, I think, an interesting story. We had a very amicable divorce, and he started dating right away. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to redefine myself and find myself. And also, I think I bought every book on, I had also, and I'll back up a bit, I had also had in 2015, I had to have I was put into like instant menopause because I had my ovaries removed and I had a hysterectomy. And so my genitalia, or my old lady bits were like completely rearranged and taken out. And so I had to deal with the physical aspect, which is something I also, in my coaching, is a big part of helping people discover what blockages or what things could be affecting their sex life or their sexuality, because there are things like chemical, physical, emotional, all these things, polarity. There are a lot of things that affect our sexuality that we don't even realize or think about. So that was front and center on my mind as I was going on to dating. I'm like, oh my God, now I have to deal with all the things that come with not only dating and just how does this work?
Yeah.
But I also have to deal with the physicality of it, right? And what was that going to feel like and be like? And so I think it kept me in that what we call curious mode, where I just wanted to read and study as much as I could. Yeah. So I'm about 6 months after my ex-husband and I separated, and we were just having a conversation, and he's like, when are you going to start dating? I was like, I don't know. He's like, what are you afraid of? He really challenged me. And I definitely give him credit for that. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know. We didn't have a great sex life. We had, all the things that happen in a relationship. And one of the reasons why it ended was we didn't have the right polarity and the right understanding of each other. And just all the things that break down, that now I work with clients, because not only do I know it firsthand, but now I've studied it and worked with other people. But I said to him, I was like, gosh, I'm just feeling, scared. Yeah. And he was like, oh, just start it. Just start dating and just look at it as experimenting. Yeah. And we had a really cool conversation about it. And it actually did inspire me to make that leap. And then it was like, oh my. And I learned a lot. I did, because I was faced with communicating and also flirting and how do I move my body and how do I want to present myself, and also then with sex, what do I do when I want to have sex? But what's funny for me is I learned firsthand all the things that get in the way. Yeah. Because I was coming to dating with my 30-year-old mind or experiences, but with my almost 50-year-old knowledge. Oh, wow. And that's what really got me curious. Because I was like, whoa, this is so wild.
So
I'm not having, okay, I'll be honest. I wasn't, now I'm going out with men and I'm not looking at them as potential fathers, to father my children.
It's completely different, I'm sure.
It's totally different. So now it was like, okay, how do I feel about just sleeping with somebody?
So now you're just looking at them as a suitable mate.
As a suitable sexual partner.
Sexual
partner.
Yeah,
and it's not that, I definitely will say that I'm more inclined to I want relationships, and then that still is my nature. But when we talk about dating, it's been a complete mind shift. So that's how I got into this, because I kept noticing the nuances, and then I kept observing. I was observing the men that I was interacting with, whether it be online or in person, and there was such an awkwardness. And I realized that we're all in the same boat. Yeah. Everybody just wants to be accepted and understood and wants to feel good and be happy and enjoy sex. Yeah. There really is a common thread. We don't know how to do it. Yeah. And so that really became the catalyst for my mission of wanting to change that and help people get comfortable with those conversations and help myself. I mean, you can't change the world without changing yourself.
Agreed. You're right.
And so that was it. It was a very self-serving, mission for me. And I love it. I feel like everything in my whole life has led me up to this. That's awesome. I'm still learning. Oh my God, I learn every day. That's what's really so cool. Good. It's a bottomless well.
That's great. Yeah. So now, when you said meeting people online, did you do any of these dating apps?
I did.
Tinder or
I did. Yeah, I did. I mean, this isn't like a promotion for anyone because I actually I'm not a fan. It doesn't work for me, and I kind of, I don't want to say I dissuade my clients from dating apps, but I have a little bit of a theory about them. I did Bumble, and I think I've done Hinge, and I played with Match a little bit. But the reality is for me, and I do believe this for most people, and when you go on a dating app, if you really think about the times, if you're in the dating world or if you're single, it tends to be an impulsive decision. Mm-hmm. So often people say, they go on it because, friends tell you, maybe you're newly single. I think you and I have talked about this before. Yeah, that people say, well, okay. And I did the same thing. I said to my friends, okay, well, who's single and what's the best app to go on? And everyone's like, okay, well, I like Bumble and I like this. And so you go on it impulsively because you feel like it's what you should do. Yeah. And a lot of people go on it without any thought or consideration as to what they want.
I didn't even know what I wanted. I was just like, whoa.
Yeah. And then it just comes at you. And then the pictures and the profiles and the tweets and the texts and it comes at you. And I do believe that we tend to go on it when we need it. Like we need the affirmation of, just like it does. There's a reason why they developed them. It tapped into the human psyche of wanting to be accepted.
I deleted all of them. I didn't have I think I was just getting tired of the texting back and forth, and I was getting tired of not actually connecting with people. Not necessarily just because you can connect with anybody via text. You can be whoever you want to be via text.
Yeah, but it's a false sense of connection. I believe
it's a false sense of connection, but that reality of I'd rather have the excitement of trying to walk up to a woman in the grocery store, which sounds creepy, but maybe to walk up to somebody.
See, that's what's interesting. Is you said it sounds creepy, but that's the most natural way.
And it is.
It's the fear of rejection that puts us on an app.
It's that fear of rejection, but
because it's safer.
Day, what's the worst that they could say is just no, thank you.
No, thank you. Or
get away.
And I love that you're bringing this up because this is something I talk about with people all the time. As I say, it truly is. And I tell women this, men go through the same thing. We have this notion that men are so different than women. And that's, I'm not a fan of the state, of the book from back in the days, Men Are From Mars and Venus. I'm actually not a fan of that because I disagree I do not think that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I think we're both from the same planet, of course, literally, but I actually think that's a misunderstanding. Mm-hmm. I think we're so much more alike than we give credit for. And rejection, I think, and fear ultimately are what keep people on the apps, our fear of rejection, and keep us off of the human connection.
It's easier to be rejected through an app.
It is. And then you just go on to the next. You have a whole pool of other people. And I tell women, if you want to meet somebody, going into a bar with hundreds of women, and
it's called the strip club.
If you want to get some sexy time on, go to a strip club. But yeah, definitely don't go to a strip club if you're looking for a man. Because the point being, a bar or even the apps, is that you're now competing against a pool of multitude of women. And this goes for men too, by the way. I say this both ways. It's think about that you are just a swipe or another option in a pool of multiple options. And there's not an opportunity for you to really come forth who you are, the kind of person that you are. And granted, I have no issue with looking at people's pictures and deciding whether you want to speak to them or not, because that's what you're ultimately doing. You're scanning.
We're visual people.
We're visual, right. But I just think it's important to understand that what it is that triggers people into going onto apps. And often it's almost a state, it's a reactive state. We're afraid to be alone. So it does fill that gap of time and distraction. And I think it's what we think we should do because everybody's doing, that's where everybody is. But the reality is so many people aren't on the apps. And, and I just encourage people, step out of your comfort zone and say hello.
You're absolutely right.
And
I
say
think that's
hello.
the biggest thing is we just need to take the step forward as men or as women. And
as
just
women too.
Go up to somebody. You know how flattering it is when a woman comes up to a man and they're like, hey, how's it going? And you're just like, what?
I tell you, every man I've ever talked to has said that. And I hope any women listening, I really want women to hear that.
Yeah.
That men have told me over and over again that what they find incredibly sexy or alluring about a woman is when she takes initiative, and that's also in the bedroom.
Yeah.
And it's not, and again, the initiative, like I said, gosh, we could be sitting here talking for hours and hours and hours about this, but, and they don't always say initiative, like initiative and expectations are two different things. So like women think, oh my gosh, taking initiative means I have to get dressed up into a sex goddess costume and have the whips and the chains.
Take your clothes off, girl. We are good.
Initiative is a touch. Exactly. Initiative is leaving a little note on the bed saying, can't wait to be with you.
Something, small little text.
A text, anything. So I think, again, it's redefining the expectations and the language for how we communicate with each other. And men find it incredibly sexy when a woman comes up to them and says, and like I've heard it over and over again, when she initiates, when she introduces herself, when she says hello and makes eye contact with me, is incredibly sexy. And I think it's something that women, like, we've lost. They're the art. That's the lost art.
Well, it's because they think that men have to take that initiative to approach them and woo them and court them and, take them out and do all this other stuff. So, and that does put pressure on us sometimes too, because I feel like I got to get dressed up. I got to be presented, and I got to, I got to put my Sunday's best on and let's get going, and at the same time, it's just like, ooh. And then at the end of the time, I'm just like, all right, I got all dressed up for nothing for her to be like, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, and that's the challenge too with the apps, because it just ultimately comes down to that.
Oh yeah, you put your best self up on that app.
I also think that
best life.
In all the, and you can, you've talked about this, the texting that goes back and forth. It's like an information dump that happens before people will even agree to meet face to face. And for me, part of the fun and the real connection is having those conversations in person. And I just think that you can determine chemistry or connection face to face. And if you're out and about, like, if you're attracted to somebody or someone catches your eye, or maybe it's someone you've been around for a while, it's a friend or someone in your circle, and all of a sudden you're noticing there's a little bit more of that, like, zing between you, then that's really how true long-term intimacy is built.
Yeah.
And so my opinion, and I always say to people, if you want to just practice kind of communicating and going through, filling up your time, an app is fine for that. There are many apps out there for that. But I personally find that it's, people I work with are busy professionals. They're smart. They're amazing people. And, it's a waste of time, Instead, go to the places and lift your head up and open your eyes and see who's around you when you're at the gym or at the grocery store.
Our phones tell us, like, now the iPhone, it breaks it down and tells you how long you spend on each app, and it categorizes it, and it'll tell you, like, you've spent an hour a day on this app, or you've spent 3 hours a day on, social media networking or whatever. And you're just like, holy, and when you look at it, you're just like, whoa, that's crazy. So one of my buddies, he actually put a timing device where his phone, you can set it up a certain way where you can only spend so much time on a certain app or a certain social media site, where he felt he was missing out on a lot of things. And he's just like, it consumes my time. He goes, it's a must that I have because I need it for my business. But at the same time, it's a time waster, because I catch myself looking at it, and then 2.5 hours go by and I'm just like, whoa, what the hell just happened? What's going on? Yeah,
and it's the same thing. The dating apps do the same thing. Everyone I ever talk to, and I'll be honest. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and I know there's exceptions to everything. I mean, people could totally disagree with me on this, and this is my work, so I do this and talk to a lot of people. But I have never met a client or a friend or a person I know that has met the love of their life on a dating app. They've gone out on dates. They've met, had connections maybe, but ultimately, I just think people who are serial dating app people, it's partly because they don't want a serious relationship. They don't mind the turnover. They don't mind the options. So I think that's really important to note. And I just encourage people to get comfortable with either, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. And not take rejection personally.
And that's the biggest thing. No, I agree. That rejection is, like, very, very frightening for a lot of people. Yeah. For me, I mean, I get told no a lot. Not just in general of like asking a woman for a number or something, but just in general, if you're in a sales job or if you're in something like that, you're going to get told no a lot. Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it made it more comfortable sometimes. I know recently now I'm, back in this dating pool of things. So I'm just kind of like figuring out like what I want. And the biggest thing for me is like, I just want to be alone sometimes.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a key, I think, for anyone is I'm always taken aback by how when you ask someone, well, what do you want? And it's just like that blank stare. And I always encourage people, let's get clear about what you want. Really clear. Yeah. And I'm not really talking about at all like physical characteristics, because that's just really insignificant. How do you want to feel? Mm-hmm. What do you want in the person that you're sharing your life with? Mm-hmm. And, I think most of us by nature, we are, we're relationship people. Mm-hmm. And I think that it surprises me how, and it goes to, again, this ties into sex too. It's like, what feels good? What do you want? And if you don't know, it's my job to help you figure that out.
Definitely.
And there's different techniques that we do that, but it's a simple question. As I tell anyone, even if you're not working with a coach, is what do you want? And get clear about that.
Definitely.
So, and that's, like I said, it goes into the bedroom. And so, that's my spiel on dating apps.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions that are going to be maybe a little funny towards you. So
I like that funny.
I want to.
Does that mean uncomfortable?
So a little. It's gonna be.
Let me take a drink of water.
It's gonna be uncomfy and a little funny as well. So I mean.
I like that. I live in uncomfortable. So see, I'm comfortable with uncomfortable. That's another thing I urge people to. A lot of growth and a lot of pleasure comes from uncomfortable.
Like it's good.
Sit in it. Yeah,
that's a good thing. So let me ask you this: when you first got into this dating world, what was your first sexual experience outside of it, other than the husband you had for essentially 20 years? What was that like? And how long after you were divorced were you just like, let's go?
So it was about 6 months. And I'll share something really personal about what happened to in those 6 months. Mm-hmm. In those 6 months, I was on a personal pleasure quest, I'll call it, in which I decided to get to know my body, my new body, because I'd had these surgeries and I was having challenges with everything from, discomfort and lubrication and all these things that come with being a menopausal woman. And so I was on a personal pleasure quest. So I got to know my body. I read books and studied the vulva, the vagina. I tried different vibrators. I did everything I could to get to know myself because I felt like if I was going to go out in the dating world, I needed to be prepared. And so fast forward, after I did decide to start dating, my first sexual experience, I would say, from the time that my ex-husband and I split, it probably was about, 8 months. Mm-hmm. It took me probably about 6 weeks of really funny, bad dates to actually find someone who I was attracted enough to actually have sex with and maybe also get through the fear of, oh my God, am I actually going to do this? I had a couple close calls that I was like, oh, I might have sex with him. But so it was amazing. And I actually look back and I laugh at that poor guy, because what was so amazing about it is I realized, because I had numbed out during my marriage and really, sex wasn't pleasurable. Mm-hmm. So to have a sexual experience that was like, holy shit, this is mind blowing. This is great. I actually can have sex and enjoy it and have an orgasm and all these things and awesome. Get through it was like, I was like, this is amazing. What have I been missing the last, 20 years? Yeah. And so it was really great.
Oh, wow.
It was exciting. And, and that actually was life-changing for me, because I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I have to learn more about this. I have to let people know that it's okay. You're going to be okay. This is where it's at. Yeah.
Come to the good side.
Yeah. So I was like, I want more. So and then, it was like, it was great. It was really great. And it was an exploration. Mm-hmm. But I then had to to change, again, a lot of it, there was a lot of psychological stuff that came with it in the sense that I had to look at what definitions of sex and intimacy I had and how this was going to play into my now single life. And I was in such default mode of pre-qualifying anyone who I was having sex with as a life partner. And learning to separate that was important for my own personal sexual growth. And then ultimately for this, continued exploration, because, and that was an old story that I was told that, growing up, like, I don't have sex with someone unless, you're going to marry them or it's going to be serious. And, that's just
Make
a
sure
lot
you know
of,
before you give your flower away.
yeah, exactly. And so that was kind of the typical rhetoric that I was raised around, and just culturally. You can't say that my parents, in defense of them, didn't exactly say that, but they weren't encouraging me to go out and have sex. They're like, save yourself for the right person. And it was just funny how all these years later, that story was still playing in my head. Yeah. Versus just letting go and enjoying safe sex. I want to say that was safe sex. There's safe sex. That I still, I'm all for casual sex and sexuality, but in a safe way, because there truly are medical concerns. So I'll kind of caveat that. That's not even, that's a given. So let's just
definitely. So like, did you explore any of like the S&M, the bondage, the different types of things? Like what was one that you just
So for me,
explored, I guess?
Interestingly enough, is that was an area that was very taboo in my marriage, or very much an uncomfortable. And I think that it never, at least in the front of my mind, was something that I thought I liked or wanted. It scared me. And I had a lot of, years of just misunderstanding about BDSM. And I'd had a client a few years ago that was very much in the extreme kink and extreme BDSM and was a polyamorous in that world. And she and I had conversations, and this was actually a few years before my divorce. And I remember the first breaking down of my I'd say opinions, or my, thoughts about what the kind of person is who must be interested in that. And that also opened up an intrigue for me. So I wasn't exploring my kink. In fact, if anything, I was very closed off. I think, one of the things that I talk about, and I've been so fortunate to, train and have a mentor who really has given an incredible language to Erotic Blueprints. Her name is Jaya Ma, and I love her Erotic Blueprints. And I've done, I do training with her, and I love how she describes the different, what she calls erotic blueprints. And one of them happens to be kink. So kink, in a sense, and I love how she defines it, is anything that is considered taboo to you. So for some people, sex missionary style is the only way to go. So, which doesn't, relate to a lot of us, but understanding that taboo and kink doesn't necessarily have to be whips and chains and drawing blood and all these things, or dominance and submission. But for me, I didn't have any exposure to that. Even in my initial dating, it wasn't really until I dove deep into studying the psychology and sexology that my years of bias towards what it meant to want those things was broken down. And I realized the shame that so many have, including myself, around being curious even. So I only just started exploring what that is in the last 6 months, because even as someone who's so sexually open and wanting the conversation, I hadn't stepped fully into the comfort of that. So it's only recently that I have been exploring like role playing and, light bondage. I still am not someone who is comfortable with, like, I don't like, for me, what we call the physical kink, which is like even spanking or whips and, the more of the hard, that doesn't speak to me. I like more of the psychological kink. Okay. When I say I like it, that's what I'm exploring now. And so what's beautiful about it's beautiful about our sexuality is that it can evolve and it can change, and we can go through all these different, stages of energetic, which, I think is something that I really like to talk about. These blueprints is that it's a language, right? So it's a way of kind of understanding where we are in our sexuality, and everybody's different. So if you're more of an energetic blueprint, you tend to like the tease, like everything's about the anticipation and the tease and the space. So an energetic, if you come at someone who identifies more with being an energetic sexuality, erotic blueprint. If you come at them and grab them and want to cuddle them or even go straight for their genitals, they're going to short circuit and they're going to be like, whoa, and just shut down.
Be over in 2 minutes.
Yes, they are like, cannot compute. Stop, you're short circuiting me. Whereas a sensual, and that's more of my primary blueprint, is all about the touch and the candles. In fact, like in my office, you see, I always have a candle
like
going. Things smell good. It's the music. It's like, ooh, and we can't be touched enough.
Nice and warm.
Yeah, warm. That's really important. It's like all the 5 senses are firing. I mean, you can put a delicious piece of food in my mouth and I'm just like, I mean, sensuals are all about the sounds and whereas energetics, and each of these blueprints has what we call a shadow side too, but the superpowers are kind of what I'm highlighting now. And then, we have the sexual, which is what typically is what in the United States or like the American, our culture has defined as what sex is. Yeah. It's all about genitals and orgasms and ejaculation and, porn and just, and it's what people automatically assume men are. I think men have unfortunately been really typecast as being purely sexual. Yeah. And the reality is a lot of women are sexual, but a lot of men are sensuals and, misunderstood. And so, it's really, that's what the work that I love to focus on is helping people get in touch. And again, this is not in any order. There's no hierarchy here. Like, with the energetic, the sensual, the sexual. And then the next one is, we have the kink. Yeah. So the kink is the area that people are all like, ooh, nobody wants to admit they're a kink. But the reality is the kinks are the most, they put the fun in sex. Yeah. They push their boundaries. And again, it could be the psychological kink that is more about the polarity of dominant submission, which really is important in a sexual relationship. This whole equality thing has really dampened and tampered down sexual energy. So naturally, polarity is a good thing. And I'm just, like I said, touching over this so kind of quickly for sake of understanding. But the kink is anything that's taboo. And often people, when we test them or, try to identify their blueprint, if they think with their head or they test with their head, they often push down their kink. But when we do a lot of the somatic testing and they find that their body responds to touch or light bondage or even submission, and kink, a psychological kink, I'll use an example, could be like, okay, Alex, go stand in the corner. Okay, turn around.
Oh.
Okay, put your hands above your head.
I don't know. I'm not submissive though.
Now bend over. And I'm just saying, like that is, that's.
Put your hands above your head and bend over.
And you feel so rolling. He's blushing. You can't see him, but he's blushing. No. So my point being is like that is kink, right? So. And then the next one is what we call the shapeshifter. And the shapeshifter is basically they are the most, just open because they can shape into any, they can play in any blueprint and they can go into their kink and be comfortable. They can be energetic and enjoy it. There's a lot of, there's challenges with each one, and shadows challenges that they often don't get their needs met because they're always conforming to others. Kinks, their shadow is often that they have no tolerance for like the energetic. They just, everything is about more. Let's, go deeper. Let's be, they always want to keep variety going, which can be of a detriment to their partner, or if they're not in a line with being open to their partner's blueprint, that can be their shadow. The sexual shadow is that they don't always enjoy the ride. They're just all about orgasm. And again, it's not a bad thing, but the shadow of a sexual is that they get very frustrated too with the sensual, because they're like, what the fuck? Let's just fuck. You know, they're like, forget the candles, forget that. Let's just, let's get to business. Yeah. And so, and then the sensual, their shadow is that they can't get out of their head. So what happens is if you're sensual, you could be in the height of passion and just, everything's great. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I forgot to email Joe back today. Oh my God, there's socks on the floor.
That's the worst.
And then, your sexual drive, your orgasm, your erection goes because you can't get out of your head. And so, it also, they can get, if things aren't just right, their environment, they get off.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, they're off. I can't do this. So it takes them a while to warm up and to get in the mood. And then an energetic, their shadow side is that they often think that they are just so spiritually enlightened and like anyone else is just, a heathen. So
I know exactly.
Yeah, they get all high and mighty, and they also, they tend to just like to be alone, and they have a hard time sometimes enjoying the physical act of sex because they get, short-circuited. So with each, there's so many positives, but so, having this understanding and this language and this context and container to connect with someone or even yourself it's like life altering. Yeah. Because now you can understand your partner, and you can even joke about it. Like you can be like, that's my sensual side kind of acting up. Okay, bear with me. Yeah. And it really just gives couples a language, and it's one of the tools that I love to use because it's fun to see people go, oh, that's what that is.
Now, this blueprint that you're talking about, can you repeat it again? Is there a website for it?
Yeah. So, Miss Jaya, JAIYA.com, she created the Erotic Blueprints, and you can actually go on her website and take the quiz and get kind of an introduction to it. I love it. I love it. It's like I said, it's a tool that I use with all my clients, and I was out to dinner with friends the other night and we were talking about it. It's just, it really creates a context for sexual conversation. And so you can go on her website, and she has some great information about it. She has a lot of great resources. Yeah. But I think it's a really great place for people to start when you want to kind of explore and you're having a hard time identifying what do I like and what are my needs. It kind of gives you the context.
Okay. Awesome. That's really cool. I really enjoy just looking things up like that too as well, and just figuring out, I guess what else other people. I mean, it's kind of like an interview. Now you can tell your partner like, hey, go take this test real quick.
Yeah, and
let me know what you're like.
And
see what you find out.
It's fun, and then you can really play. That's what I tell people. Sex is it's supposed to be great. It's not. It's just. I'm not sure why or what point. It becomes something that we don't want to talk about with our partners. And I think it's amazing the things that we'll talk about. I mean, look on social media. People are talking about everything. They're putting everything out there, but yet we can't have a conversation with someone that we're about to share our bodies with, that we, for years, about this is what I like and this is what I don't like. Yeah. And it's not a reflection of you. It's that I'm a sensual and, I need more foreplay, or I need to relax.
You gotta preheat
sexuals
that oven
need
before you stick in the turkey, man.
Exactly. Yeah, there's some prep here. So it's so, I loved it when I found her work. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
So right now, are you playing right now? Do you have partners? Do you have one partner? Do you have
three? Right now, I am in what I would call the curious adventurous stage. So there's different stages to that, we say, in our eroticism or sexuality. So there's the healing stage, and this will kind of make sense when I say I'm in the curious adventurous stage. So there's the resting stage, which is conscious, like maybe celibacy by choice. Okay. You're resting, either because you have an injury or you just don't have a partner, or you've just decided I need to take a break from sex. Could be any reason. And a lot of these will overlap. And the next one is the healing stage. And that could be due to after a woman has a baby, she can't have intercourse for 6 weeks, or you have an injury, or you're emotionally healing and you're not actively engaged in sex. So resting and healing tend to kind of overlap, and you can change your stage in a given day, you know. And then the next stage is what we call the curious stage, and that's when you're in that stage of how to. You want to just know, how does this work? How do I do this? What is this about? The challenge is that you can get stuck in the how-to stage with just information overload. The next stage is the adventurous stage. And that's when you're like, okay, I want to take everything I learned in the how-to and like explore and try. Yeah. And the challenge with that is that you just have to, you know, have your boundaries clear, and that you don't overload yourself. And then the next is the transformational, which is kind of that state when you want to look at sex beyond just like more of the spiritual transformative practices like Tantra maybe, or, you know, how sex is used in more of an energetic or ceremonial way. So I would say that I personally I kind of like dancing between curious and transformational, because I'm in that stage of, you know, exploring, getting comfortable more with what parts of me, and still I test out where kink is still the lowest in my blueprint, but we stack and we change even throughout a sexual act. We could start off in our sensual and then change into the sexual, and then all of a sudden we're in the energetic. So, you know, even within a sexual act or intercourse with someone, we could be changing through our blueprints. And so I would say I'm curious, adventurous, but also looking into the transformational, because I'm really fascinated with Tantra, and I've been studying that. And that, I think, is a lifelong study.
And what's Tantra?
So Tantra, oh gosh, that's, you know, ask me that. Tantra is so broad. It's an ancient way of connecting and energetic. You know, and I think what a lot of people know Tantra, is, I think Sting and Trudy, his wife, years ago came forward and were like, oh, you know, we're studying Tantra so that you can have orgasms without intercourse. And that's what a lot of people, it's a spiritual practice. I'll leave it at that. It's a sexuality, spiritual practice. And so there's techniques and there's different ways. And there's a lot of, you know, new modernization of Tantra, which I'm really fascinated in, because I think like anything that is old also that has been practiced for centuries can have some new modern applications. And so I'm looking, there are a lot of great teachers out there doing, you know, urban Tantra and all these great workshops on, you know, like we all can't go off on a mountain and, you know, for weeks on end and explore energetic orgasms. You know, we live in a world. That sounds
like legit.
It does sound legit. I wish I could have. Yeah. Oh, energetic orgasms are totally legit. Oh my gosh, there's so many orgasms. Yeah, we could talk about orgasms too. That's a whole nother podcast. There's so many things to talk about with sex. Sure. Yeah, but it's just, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. And I do I have partners? I have a partner at the time that I'm playing with. But I'm, you know, I still am at the core of who I am, a relationship person. Okay. And do
you still look at it as like, I could settle down with this person?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting better at looking at playing. Yeah.
So now is it hard for you sometimes to separate that, like, you know, sexual urges with this person, but at the same time try not to develop those like type of, I guess, feelings of like, I want to spend my life with you, or
no,
I want
not
to be in
anymore.
a relationship with you? Or
yeah, no, because I actually approach every encounter, I'll call it that way, or interaction with someone with openness. Okay. I used to just approach my singlehood or my dating or just my encounters with, you know, that was just my prior self with kind of the prequaling. Could this person be a relationship person? Like this chatter in my head. Is this someone I could spend the rest of my life with? Oh my gosh. You know, that kind of thing. And so I've come away from that, but still at the heart of who I am, I'm not the kind of person that, you know, I'm not I don't practice poly, which is, you know, multiple partner, like, you know, could be multiple partners within a relationship. You know, that doesn't appeal to me. I'm still a monogamous, you know, driven kind of person. Will that change? Maybe. Again, I'm very open, but I have found myself I really love the connection. And I've had a relationship since my marriage. I had a long-term relationship that was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And I prefer finding, you know, I'm still, I think, kind of, for lack of, I'm a seeker regardless. And I'm a seeker of having an incredible person in my life. But in the meantime, until I find that person, until it jazzes me up, or there's someone who we mutually want to explore being in a relationship with, I'm playing.
Okay.
And enjoying it. And I'm open to it without any, shamelessly and unapologetically. Yeah.
That's really good. That sounds like a good place to be in.
I'm really lucky. Yeah, I am in a really good place with that. It feels really good. And I want everybody to have that experience. Like, not to go out there, and I hear it all the time, like, that's it. I'm done with dating, or I'm done with relationships, or I'm done with this. And they're completely, like, it's like got to be this way or that way. And I think to be able to be open to experience enables, like, it's amazing the things that come to me.
Yeah.
I meet the most incredible people, and I've had relations with the most incredible men. And some of them I don't ever want to see again. And some of them I want to see again.
That's awesome.
So it's just that openness. Life it's like a buffet.
That's really cool. I like that.
It's a delicious buffet.
Look at you. I'm going to eat them all up, right?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. Let them know who you are, what's your website, things like that, where they can subscribe, whatnot.
Yeah, I'm I'm Laura Rothschild, and I'm at lifereimagined.rocks.
Okay.
And when you get there right now, it depends on when you're listening to this, you might find a landing page, because I'm putting together some incredible things for 2020, some retreats, some workshops, and one-on-ones. So we're redoing our website, and but you can put your email in and get some delicious, delightful tidbits coming your way.
There you go. Subscribe to that.
So subscribe to that. Yeah, I won't junk up your inbox with useless shit. You'll get some good stuff.
I like it. We'll have to do this again. We'll sit down, have a different topic next time. Maybe we can do it.
I want to continue the conversation. We have to talk about vulvas and penises and
totally go into
orgasms, and
I'm definitely game. We'll set it up again. We'll do it for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you like it, ask for more.
There you go. Other than that, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
Yeah. See you guys. Have a good one.
Bye. Oh my God, the loudest day. These guys, I'm so sorry. I kept hearing boom, boom, boom. I'm like, motherfuckers, what are you doing? Oh, Alex, that was so much fun.